Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you the process of this graphite portrait and share with you the tips that I think you would benefit from. So stick with me to the end and let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you would want me to talk about. It is my first graphite portrait on Arches paper. This is a watercolor hot press paper, and I absolutely love the red margins. It doesn't have a texture as smooth as a Bristol paper, and I found that to be a little bit challenging. But I really wanted to try it because I've seen beautiful artworks done on this paper, and I know you could have amazing results with it. First thing I usually like to work on a portrait is the eyes. One thing that you would want to do differently than I did here is working with a sharper pencil. It is a small area where you need a darker value, and working with a blunt pencil doesn't allow you to have an excellent control. Eyes are the main focal point in portraiture, and I feel like my work comes to life once I shade them. Another reason I start with the eyes when making a portrait is because in general, when I start a new work of art, I have that excitement and that energy, and as I progress and spend more and more time working on it, I might get bored or tired. And if there is an area in my portraits that I want to give more of myself, that is the eyes area. I usually start with harder pencils, and as I get used to the values I can get and to control them, I progress to softer ones. This is just one of those habits that you can pass once you have more and more experience and confidence working with any medium. There is one thing that you've already seen me doing in this video, and you will see more of that, and that's painting with graphite powder. You can make graphite powder by rubbing the pencil on a piece of sandpaper, then with a dry brush lift some of the powder and start blocking the shadowed areas in your portrait or drawing. This can be a real help in more than one way. First, it helps you to identify the correct values, starting with lighter ones and progressing to darker tones. And here is where this tip makes a huge difference, and that is because it doesn't affect the texture of the paper. When working with pencils or charcoal, hatching layer after layer affects the paper in such a way that it won't be able to hold more powder at some point. But with this trick, you can gain extra layers and work more on the same area. Not to mention the time you will be saving. There is one common mistake that beginners make when they draw or paint portraits. I've made this mistake myself as a beginner, and that is the belief that the teeth and eyes are white. Leaving shadows aside, the white of teeth or eyes is just a very light skin tone. So I encourage you to use this technique of brushing graphite powder to darken a little the white of the paper. This will help you achieve a more natural look, and it leaves you the opportunity to create highlights where needed using an eraser. Another tip that you may find helpful is using a 2B mechanical pencil in those areas where you need precise dark values, like the space between the teeth in this case, or the corners of the mouth. Use the brush and graphite powder to make light shadows on the face and start creating the illusion of form and volume. It is essential at this point to start paying more attention to your reference photo. Be aware of the following things: where the light comes from, what are the most highlighted areas, and where are the darkest areas. These are the easiest to identify, and once identified, you can find the values in between. There is much more to talk about on the subject of building light and shadow, but if you start here, it will help you observe your reference better. When you work on the hair, avoid trying to make each hair separately. Like in painting, remember to paint the light and the effect of light on your subject. Block the darker areas with an 8B pencil and keep in mind to control the value by controlling the pressure you apply on your pencil. Press harder to make the shadow near the face and lighter as you go down the hair strand and away from the face. Use longer and shorter hatches as the light falls differently on each hair. Shading is very similar to watercolors in the sense that you can build layers from light to dark until you achieve your values. But you can also start with the darkest value if you trust your instinct and you have good knowledge on how to observe your reference and on how your paper and pencil behave. Observe that for the part of the hair on the forehead, I already applied a layer of graphite powder so that I can have a base to work on. You can make another layer if you need a darker base. You just need to achieve the mid-tones so you can work on top of them with dark and light. Spreading the graphite on paper with a dry brush helps you to create a soft pass from dark to light. Then you can start creating the illusion of individual hairs with a sharp pencil. You can do this by making lines that indicate the direction the hair is going. Create a natural look by controlling the pressure of the pencil. A 2B mechanical pencil is sharp and soft enough to give you the dark lines that you need when you apply more pressure and lighter ones when you apply less pressure. The pressure you apply should be gradual, from hard to soft, so that your line goes from dark to light as it approaches the area where the light touches the hair. Working on the eyebrows is similar to shading the hair. You can start with a mid-tone base, marking where your eyebrows are placed, and then drawing lines on top of it indicating the hairs and the direction they grow. Some artists like to shade their portraits by segments, meaning that they go to the next area only after the previous one is almost completed. For myself, I found that staying too much in one place makes me get bored. Or to put it in other words, I like the holistic experience. I like to see the whole portrait taking shape. So you will see me jumping from one area to another and working on the entire portrait at the same time. There is no good or wrong way to work on a portrait, and as you experiment, you will find the workflow that suits you the best. Shading the hair strand by strand will help you establish its natural flow, because hairs are grouped in strands that follow different paths, creating a dynamic composition. Follow the direction the strand is flowing and give it that illusion with shadows and highlights. Your picture and your drawing are still, but the long hair has a movement of its own and it gives a rhythm of your portrait. Draw a few individual hairs that extend beyond the contour of the head. This will help you give your portrait an even more realistic and natural look. Always remember not to get in the trap of mid-tones. It may be perceived as a comfort zone at the beginning, being scared not to ruin your work with bold shades. But depriving your drawing of contrast, it will make it look flat. So make use of intense dark values and highlights and create contrast where you feel your shapes are missing volume. I'm not used to talk about my process, and I'm doing my best at explaining what I do and sharing all the tips I feel you would benefit from. So if you haven't done it yet, subscribe and turn on all the notifications, because I'm just getting used to it and there will be more tips, art chats and videos on this channel. So make sure you won't miss them.